Hi, hello, how are you? Welcome back in. We're back for Power Rankings Week 30. We're going to recap the weekend. We got the playoff races going on, and don't get too far ahead here because we got games tonight and tomorrow. It's a busy time in Major League Soccer. Matthew Doyle is here with me. I'm Tom Bogert. Doyle, my man, how are we doing?
We're good. Very excited for the So Rare Power Rankings show every week. You could watch it or listen to us here on Twitter Spaces. You could watch us on MLS's YouTube channel. And of course, you can listen to it on the MLS Today podcast feed. We checked all the boxes, right, buddy?
I was about to say, you elbowing me out of the way and trying to take that instead of passing it across for the tap in. So, yeah, as Doyle said, Power Rankings are presented by So Rare today. And we are going to be talking about the playoff line. The playoff line is the theme. That is what the focus is heading towards kind of the last few weeks of the season. Obviously, we got a Shield race. We got an MVP race. But we've talked about that on the editions of the show, both me and you, and a couple weeks ago. And I know you guys did plenty of that last week. So sorry, Philly, LAFC, Austin. Not going to get to you today. We're going to talk about the playoff line. But first, we're going to go with some obituaries. Matt Doyle is writing his premier content, the What 2022 Meant for Your Team. And I'm also writing a little shoulder content for Matt Doyle of 3 big questions, taking interviews. Check those out on MLSsoccer.com, if for nothing else than to just watch the gifts that Doyle finds. I have no idea. He will never give away that secret of where those gifts come from and the deep reservoir of options that you have. So let's get to it first. DC United, number 28 in the power rankings, officially eliminated from playoff contention. Doyle, you wrote about it today. The piece just went up, but what's kind of your biggest takeaway from this team season?
The disarray. And I hate to be negative about it, but like they're dead last in the rankings. They're dead last in the power rankings. They're probably going to win their 4th wooden spoon, which ties them with San Jose for the most in league history. And I understood why there was some optimism heading into the season because they really had improved last year under Losada. But like it just all fell apart so quickly, and Losada was clearly unhappy with both the players and the front office, and then it wasn't clear who in the front office was calling the shots, whether
they were clearly unhappy with him as well. I think it's
right
fair to point that out on the front end.
I mean, he lasted 7 games. That's 20% of the season on a coach who, like, if you're firing him after 7 games, you have an idea going into the season that he's not the guy you want running the show for the whole year. So like it's just a lot that felt disorganized. And what it's been left with is, okay, they have a club CEO or president and Dave Casper, who clearly has input on roster building. They have Lucy Rowland, who's GM, Rushton, who clearly has input on roster decisions. They spent a couple years building for Ben Olsen, then they spent a year building for Hernan Losada, including over the winter when they sold Paul Arriola, who has gone on to have maybe a best 11 caliber season in Dallas. And then they had Chad Ashton for 15 games, and obviously they weren't building for him, but the idea was to keep him through the end of the season. Things got so bad, they then jumped at Wayne Rooney when Wayne Rooney was available. Now they're building for him already. So, with Victor Paulson I think Pablo reported it for The Athletic. Like, that was a guy that Wayne Rooney had scouted when he was doing his UEFA Pro license. Ravel Morrison played for Wayne Rooney at Derby County. Like, these are clearly guys that Wayne Rooney has said, we got to sign them. So right. It's a Frankenstein's monster of a roster is what I'm saying. It just has been pieced together with no sort of North Star in terms of what they want it to be. And so even though I see some good things from what Rooney's trying to do here, it's hard to be too optimistic because we have no idea who's actually steering the ship.
Yeah, I think that's a good point too, because this was, they weren't like a model of success over the last decade, but they had the stability with Casper and Ben Olsen, and then Losada comes in, and going back, not to look too much about last year, you were kind of at some point during the middle of the season, you're like, all right, they finally have a new identity. Like, you could kind of see like the path or like the idea here. And then, as you said, a lot of the signings were brought under Losada's vision. And then after a few games this season, Losada was gone. And now they're doing the same thing in the summer. And again, that makes a lot of sense. The coach has to have input on the players that come in, or it's going to be a train wreck. But then if something happens where Lozada goes, and then, okay, we need to change the tactical shift again, then it's going to take a little while, and you need to have this rebuild. And all of the players that came in and out this summer for Wayne Rooney, under Wayne Rooney, his contract's only guaranteed through next season. Like, there's some like reporting on whether this is like a dual option for both parties. Again, I'm sure that the idea is for this to be a long-term solution, but there's a possibility that this happens again in a year, right?
I mean, it seems like it, yeah. And that's like, that is the grimmest thing possible, because then you end up going through this entire process and you're losing any sort of momentum, any sort of goodwill. And at the same time, you're losing the chance to build a Philadelphia Union or FC Dallas style pipeline from the academy to the first team. Like, in terms of local talent, right? I think in the top tier in the US and Canada is Southern California, Dallas Metro, Toronto, and New York City Metro, right? Including
New Jersey. Thank you.
Yeah, Tom Bogert, elite prospect, right? So that's it. But the next tier down, North Virginia is maybe the top team or top region in that next tier down. The amount of talent that's come through there, and DC United, like, if they just open that pipeline, they can be the Union with the ability to sign guys like Christian Benteke and spend money on Taxi Funtas and stuff like it's sitting right there for them if they have the clarity of vision and the ability to execute. And it's just so disheartening that for so long they have had neither. They've had neither.
Real quickly, we'll both go one positive thing for next season and one position to upgrade. For me, the positive, I'm a big Christian Benteke guy. Like, I think that if he stays fit, he's going to do really well. But again, maybe that's just I've watching him as a target. I think he's going to be so dominant in the air. So that kind of ties to my one position to upgrade would be like an absolute elite crossing winger, which Julian Gressel was a wing back that they traded away. He would have been pretty good, I think, for Benteke. And goalkeeper, whether that solution's internal, if they re-sign David Ochoa, but that's a position they need to upgrade or, again, keep Ochoa. What about you? One positive, one position.
Well, I mean, the positive for me is that ownership showed a willingness to spend this year in a way that they never had before. And look, we're talking about a league with the LA Galaxy, Toronto FC, and Atlanta United as, the three highest spending teams. So clearly money doesn't fix everything in MLS, but I think it's better to have more of it. And DC United suddenly playing at a higher stakes table than they were. So that's the positive. Like, clearly there's a commitment from the ownership. If there's a position that needs upgrading, I think it's center back. Like, Steve Birnbaum's still a pretty good MLS center back, but Donovan Pines hasn't really developed. Brendan Hines-Ike has been just completely ruined by injuries. Tony Alfaro's not it. They're having to play Victor Paulson, who they brought in as a DPD mid in the middle of the back line, and that hasn't worked. So they need to get that right, whether that's internal development or going out and signing someone off the international market, or make Aaron Long an offer he can't refuse, and he's a free agent. Like get that right. And then, because if you have a very solid or above central defensive combo, that allows you to do more stuff upfield. And I think what we've seen from Rooney is they want to be able to do more stuff. They don't want to be a team that just plays long balls that crosses a million times a game. They want to use the ball to disorganize you. They want to play something that I think approaches the style that we've seen in LAFC over the past few years. They just they have nothing approaching the personnel on the back line that can accomplish that.
DC United doing more stuff. Read that kind of analysis in Doyle's obituary for this team that is up on MLSsoccer.com right now. Moving on to another team that is not eliminated just yet, but this piece could be up as soon as tomorrow. Sporting Kansas City, they are number 23 in the power rankings. They tied Houston Dynamo 0-0 on the road. Again, your obituary here, what 2022 meant for this team isn't up yet because they are not eliminated, but again, it could happen this week. So Doyle, again, I'm sure that you either have already written it or have the framework in mind. Kind of what was your big takeaway from Sporting Kansas City's 2022 season?
I mean, I'm going to start with the positive. Like, I was underwhelmed at the time with their summer transfer window. Eric Tommy, he has a good resume in his prime, kind of a positionless central midfielder, not really an 8, not really a 10, but he's come in and he's looked really good as like a free 8 in Peter Vermees's, 4-3-3 forever system. But Willie Agata, man, this guy,
electric.
He's so much fun. He has like insane acceleration. Like his top end speed is really great too, but like his acceleration when he goes from like third gear to fifth gear is incredible. And like he's always making super aggressive runs that push back the opposing back line. He's always trying to split the center backs. He's willing to go at the sort of B gaps between the center back and the fullback. He does a little bit of hold up play. He's super unselfish. He gives great post game quotes. So I like just honestly, like just between those two signings, I like before those two, Tom, there was no silver lining to this year for Sporting Kansas City. It didn't exist, but they got it so right in the summer that it like I'm finding myself able to be bullish a little bit on Sporting KC. They still have so much work to do. Like there's going to be a full-on teardown this offseason. But that's okay because they already have now two, I think, really crucial pieces in place between these two guys that they signed this summer. And it should be said, Remy Walter has started playing a lot better since they've moved him full-time to defensive midfield.
Yeah, and Gata, I think one of the important things, I'm glad you touched on it with the post-game quotes and stuff. This team in July needed so badly, not just his goals, not just his off-the-ball movement, just the total package of vibes that he brought to this team that was like in desperate need of it. I think that was my favorite part about his signing. I was wrong. I looked at the profile that came in. I was dubious, might be a little too strong, but I was like, all right, we'll see. This isn't exactly somebody coming with a huge pedigree, and he's been really good really quickly. So that's been really fun to watch. So let's talk about that teardown. What do you think that looks like? Does this mean Alan Polito's gone as well? Because Peter Vermees is
the big one,
guy, and Willie Agata, as you said, has been the bright spot on this team since he got here midseason. Is Alan Polito club record signing the first time that they went out and spent a huge sum of money on a player? Is he gone?
It's a really good question, and the party line from Sporting Kansas City people is no, because you want to have depth at that spot, and who's to say that having that kind of depth is a bad thing? But it's like you don't want to have your DP be your depth, man. Like you ideally you want to free up that DP slot and use it somewhere else where they obviously need the help, maybe another of the central midfield spots, because there's no guarantee that Gadi Kinda is going to come back and look anything like he did 2 years ago. Right. Mm-hmm. So it's a massive question. I personally lean towards no. Like Polito's missed most of 2 years, and he hasn't been like, he's been good. He hasn't been super good when he's been on the field. Like I'm not saying I would be surprised that they brought him back, but like there's a good argument not to. The flip side is like he's still a super skilled center forward. He can play, I think, in a two forward alignment. Maybe Peter Vermees has a moment of inspiration, is willing to do that. Plus, you get him in a contract year center forward. Guys like that tend to be productive.
That's a good point. I think the counter argument, though, would be then you are risking letting him leave for free at some point after that contract, regardless if he plays good or bad. And then, I think that there's still going to be a market for him in Liga MX. So, again, these are all big decisions that Sporting Kansas City have to look to towards the offseason. Again, that's another team you should read. Every single one of these, we're going to be releasing them whenever these teams are eliminated, whether it's from playoff contention.
Give me one more of your big questions for this team, because it's not all about the attack, right? Like we haven't even touched on the defense.
I think, from all of those, how many new starters could there be just on that back line? And it is the Tim Melia reign over? It's St. Zusia right back. You got the old guard / like some of the younger or the more in prime options that were kind of brought in on that back line. It just kind of feels like that might need a complete makeover.
Yeah. Yep. We see eye to eye there.
Cool.
Tossing it back to you. You got
it. All right. Again, read those on MLSsoccer.com. They will be released every time teams are eliminated. And again, there could be some more teams eliminated tonight and tomorrow as there are more games in MLS. But let's get to the meat here. Let's get to the playoff line. We're going to go in order of the power rankings. So we're going to probably jump east to west a little bit here, depending on where these teams fall. First up, number 19, Inter Miami, coming off a 3-1 loss to the Chicago Fire on the weekend. That is their third straight loss to the Red Bulls, to Columbus, and now to Chicago. They have 5 games left. They are sitting 5 points below the playoff line. Doyle, does this team Is this team still in the race because they have a game in hand on Atlanta, or is it kitchen sink time just about over?
I mean, if they win tonight, they're still in the race, but it is the definition of a must win. And we were saying it, 2-3 weeks ago at the start of the stretch. We were saying like, okay, it's all 6-pointers for Miami for the next month, and they've started that stretch with 3 straight losses. Like, that's absolutely devastating. And you know what it was? We talked about this on Extra Time on Monday. It was that red card Pozuelo got a half hour into the Red Bulls game. Because Tom, they were the better team through the first half hour. They were the better team in that game until they went down to 10 men, and the Red Bulls just killed them. And then Miami had to go on the road, I think it was, at Columbus without their number 10, without their best chance creator. They didn't play terrible, but they weren't going to win that game, and they didn't. And then this game was just like everything that could go wrong did. Everything that could go wrong did at Chicago. And if you're not beating Chicago, it's tough for me to see a path, man.
Yeah, and so like you said, they are playing Columbus tonight. Columbus are the team that they're 5 points behind. They are level on games with them. So if they win, they're only 2 points behind, and then it's a complete different conversation. But yeah, with Chicago, I'm going to read you Chicago's goals scored over the last 5 games: 0, 0, 0, 0, 1. And they scored 3 against Inter Miami on the weekend. So that is not a positive sign. Yeah, so Doyle, they have Columbus now. Sorry, I just lost my place in the rank. Columbus now. They do play against at DC, at Toronto. Those are 2 teams below the playoff line, particularly we just talked about DC. Orlando at home and Montreal at home. That's not the worst schedule. I mean, Montreal is going to be a really difficult one at the end of the season if they're still alive. But, I think that they would take a scenario in which they're still playing for their playoff lives on decision day. Very much so right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you offered them that at the like, they would absolutely take that, but I'm not. I think that is the least likely of the 2 options. I think it's more likely that they end up, with a point out of these next couple of games, and or maybe only 3 points out of these next couple of games, and like Miami's at the point where they need to win out, I think, or come close to it anyway, and they just haven't. They haven't looked like that. Like, even when they had that good run, because they did, they had a good run from mid-April to mid-August. It's not like they were stringing dominant performances together, one after another. They were able to
couple comebacks,
sort of gut out results. Like be tough to beat, and like they're beyond the point in the season where that's good enough. And the other thing is, like, the past 3 games, Tom, they have not been tough to beat. They just haven't.
Yeah, but so I do want to give a positive to that. The fact that they're difficult to beat, that's not something you could say about this team in their entire MLS existence. So that in and of itself, I think, is a positive. I didn't see them being in the playoff race as long as they have been this year. So I think that's another positive. This was supposed to be kind of a rebuilding year. And again, depending on how the last few games finish up, they could end up, say, like 11th or 12th, and we'll look back on it different or whatever it is. I still do think that there are enough positive signs from the season, regardless of how this playoff race finishes out. And again, I don't want to be moral victory FC here, because who cares in a league where half the teams make the playoffs? You need to have a higher bar. But I'm looking at it from the positive side that those are a lot of kind of big steps forward from what this team was. And a couple more points. Interesting stat: Miami has won only 1 of the 8 games that Gonzalo Higuain has scored, 5 of which they've lost. But at center forward, Leo Campagna is available to return tonight. He's been out since October 2nd. Phil Neville said he's ready to start, so we'll see if he starts.
Out since August 2nd.
What did I say?
You said October. That's fine. I do that all the time in my head.
Going in the future.
Let me ask you this: if they win tonight, do they make the playoffs?
I'd still put New England ahead of them, and that's, again, probably unfair. But and Columbus keep dropping points, and every time we think they're going to pull away, so I'd still say no. But it's so difficult to rule anybody out.
It's definitely back on the table if they get the win tonight. But it's such a massive if, the way they've been playing, and like as often as Columbus dropped points, they've lost once since May. Like, Columbus is the definition of tough to beat, even though they're like the worst team in the world over the final 15 minutes of the game. It's like, it's only an MLS, man. It's such a dichotomy.
Well, when you have Lucas Alrayon and Cucho Hernandez just getting draws from all these winning positions I don't think it's not enough in terms of a positive outlook, but we'll talk about them later. Let's move on to number 17, the New England Revolution. They lost 2-1 to the New York Red Bulls. They are now in 8th place on 38 points. They're 3 points below Columbus off that final playoff spot. But as said, Columbus do have a game in hand. The Revs were without Carlos Hill, but Giacomo Veroni's returned for the first time in a month. Gustavo Bo is fully back now after being out for a little while. There's still some other guys missing, but without Carlos Hill, that attack had 4 shots, 1 shot on target, and a 0.5 expected goals. Doyle, what did you make of the Revs' performance at the New York Red Bulls?
Did you see the pass though? If you're watching on YouTube,
Incredible.
Here it is.
Incredible.
Oh my God. Like what? Like that was insane. And like at first I was like, did Bo mean that? But then you look at the replay and you see him take a peek over his shoulder. It's a brilliant run from Tommy McNamara. Good lesson for Daniel Edelman, the young D mid for Red Bulls. It was just a spectacular moment. The thing to remember about the Revolution last year is that they were not traditionally dominant. Their 73-point season, their record-setting Supporters Shield winning season, which, by the way, will stand for another year because neither Philly nor LAFC now can exceed 72 points. That season was built on those types of moments. Guys, like the team just being solid enough defensively, and then either Heel or Tajon Buchanan or Adam Buksa or Bo, or defensively, Matt Turner making a special play. And they had so much of that they were able to string together an obscene amount of 1-goal wins, a record amount of 1-goal wins. And obviously, with most of those guys either gone or hurt all year, it's gone in the different direction. And this game was emblematic of what they've been. Tom, they've dropped 29 points from winning positions this year. That is far and away worst in the league, and including 3 points in this game. And they didn't have Carlos Hill. That's a really big loss, and I don't think anybody expected them to come away from this game with a point as soon as they saw that Hill wasn't available. I certainly didn't. But once you go up 1-0, like you're in a playoff race, you've got to be able to lock it down. And they just have no ability to do that. And it's like I kept expecting them to show that because I think they have the potential to be way more solid instead of, but they just have not developed that at all. And at this point, I'd be surprised if they push across the playoff line. I think like the chance isn't totally gone, right? Because it's a Bruce Arena team and they can get hot, and they have Bo, like you said, they have Bo back. They'll have Heel back now, hopefully for all 4 of their final games. Like Georgi Petrovic has been amazing, but like I don't think it's going to happen for him.
Yeah, and just even looking at the goals, like that they were like way too easy to play through. That Christian Castro's goal was a nice finish by him, but one pass broke 2 lines, and one run broke the next line, and all of a sudden he's 1-on-1 on goal when they had 8 or 9 defenders behind the ball, and that's just uncharacteristic for what you'd expect from this team, from a team that, as you said, grinded out so many results last year. Petrovic's been really good, but he can't do all of it. At some point, there's got to be kind of a better foundation in front of them. They can't defend deep very well, and this is against a Red Bulls team who we've been saying all year struggle against teams that sit back. So this was a situation where, if anywhere, and the Red Bulls at home have been much worse than the Red Bulls on the road, this was kind of one where 3 points were there for the take, and they didn't take it. The game-losing goal was on a penalty. That's their league-high 10th penalty conceded this season. Like, these are just – they're beating themselves. It's just way too easy to get goals on this team.
Yeah. I mean, and it's hard to put your finger on one precise exact reason why. But, whatever it is, Bruce Arena hasn't been able to figure it out. Guys like Henry Kessler and Andrew Farrell and Matt Polster have all been worse than last year. It's now do or die time. And it feels like it's not going to happen. But of course, 3 weeks ago on this show, we had a couple of Timbers guys on, and they were already giving the epitaph or the obituary for the eulogy was what I was trying to say for the Timbers season, and we know what's happened since then. So this is MLS. Crazy stuff can happen. The Revs do have a lot of talent, so maybe we'll see a run. But if it's going to happen, it has to start. Like, they have to win in Houston. They have to go down to Houston in the summer, get 3 points on the road, or it's done.
It is a manageable run, though, at Houston, home to Montreal, home to Atlanta, at Chicago to finish off the season. That's a team that could take, 9 points from that run or whatever you want to call it. So, again, it's not looked great, and we keep on waiting for this team to look like last year's team and these stars to be healthy and fit. But, it's still on the table. Speaking of runs, let's go to the Western Conference. The Seattle Sounders, 2 wins in a row, up to number 15 in our power rankings with a 3-0 win over Austin FC. Doyle, play the Undertaker meme. Are Seattle back? Are they out of the coffin?
I feel like we should have Anders on for this one, because
I can't imagine he slept in a week.
Oh my God. Like, Tom, the group chat went pretty silent for most of August, but over the past 2 weeks, Anders is 100% back. They're doing all the stuff that we were just talking about in the last segment that like we kind of expect the Revs to do. Right? They look completely revitalized. They're getting the ball into the spots that they want in attack. Guys like, Raul Diaz and Jordan Morris and Nico Ladero are delivering. And, they have, we've been here before vibes. And defensively, they've been much harder to break down, which was a big thing. And like the Sounders were uncharacteristically sloppy and kind of soft defensively throughout most of the summer. But it's also like they waited till their backs were 100% against the wall. They have almost zero margin for error. Like, they can't have a B+ outing from here on out. It's got to be all A's or A+, if they're going to get over the hump and get into the playoffs. And while I'm like, it's the Sounders, so I'm not about to count them out. Like, it's tough to say at this point that I'm definitely going to count them in.
Yeah, 4 points below Real Salt Lake on the playoff line. Both teams have 4 games left. The Galaxy have a game in hand, and if the Galaxy win that game in hand, they go above RSL. But still, that would just be 4 points ahead of the Seattle Sounders. A courtesy of Jeremiah Oshan there, the Sounders are projected 29% chance to make the playoffs behind these teams, so they have the least probability for all these teams. But I don't know how much that factors the ex-dog that's been there before, all the things that all the hacky sports radio takes that we could kind of give right now. Seattle Sounders there are looking better in those results. One thing that I thought was going to happen a lot sooner was Albert Rusnak playing a little bit further up the field. They went with a double pivot of Atencio and Leyva, or again, you can kind of delineate this a little bit better than I have. But are you kind of surprised that it took a little while to put Rusnak, who again for 4 or 5 years at RSL was a number 10, was their kind of creator in chief, their offensive dynamo, and then he comes to Seattle and he played really well in the beginning as like a ball progressing number 8 next to João Paulo before he got hurt. So were you surprised that it took a little while for them to try this?
So on one hand, yes, because I think it was a solution that was just sitting there waiting to be tried. And on the other hand, no, because look, Brian Schmetzer has had the success he's had, not by messing around with what works. Like, his greatest strength as a coach is not his problem solving. It's that he has generally not tinkered around with a successful formula. And as you said, Rusnak as a ball progressing 8 at the like, they literally won CCL, man. Like, they would not have won CCL if Rusnak wasn't in that position doing this stuff. Like, he made them unpressable for a while. Like, you were able to use that against Pumas and NYCFC and Leon. Like, it was a significant personnel decision with significant tactical ramifications. So just Schmetzer being who he is, and like, no, I'm not surprised that it took him to this point to make that decision. But the hope, I think, if you're a Sounders fan, is that he sticks with it, because it looked so good against Austin, having Atencio and Leyva in those spots. Though I will say, Seattle was in control of that game from basically the first minute, but it's not like they were peppering Austin's net. It's not like they were carving him up and creating chance after chance. Now, game states had something to do with it. And I would argue that in Seattle's situation, getting the defensive solidity that they had is more important necessarily than creating a million chances. But it was a great win. And I think it's right that Sounders fans are jacked right now. But there are some red flags if you want to look at that and say like, oh, maybe this run that we've been on the past 2 games isn't quite as sustainable as we're all hoping.
Yeah, and every team can do this with their worst result or most frustrating result. But just going back 2 games, a 2-0 lead at Orlando City late in the game turns into a 3-2 loss. If they had kind of stalled out with defensive solidity, that the end of that one, they'd be on 42 points, just 1 point below the playoff line. And I think this conversation would be a lot different because that's how slim the margins are. Yeah,
that and the home loss to RSL a month ago, like that was the big one. Like, and that was one where Seattle played really well for the first 20-25 minutes, and they had chance after chance, and they couldn't put the ball in the net. And I said, I literally tweeted, Seattle's got to make this count or they're going to get X-dogged by RSL. They got X-dogged by RSL. RSL won that one in Seattle. Like, obviously, if that one result goes in a different direction, they're like completely flipped in the standings.
Dudes posting their wins. I like that. Go ahead, Doyle. I love that. Moving on here to number 14 in the power rankings, LA Galaxy, who continue to leave the door open for a team like Seattle to come up and leave the door open for Real Salt Lake to stay above the playoff line. They had a 1-1 draw at Nashville in a very wild game that had another Chicharito missed penalty, and then Ricky Pooch scoring the equalizing penalty in the 8th minute of stoppage time in a game in which there was supposed to be 4 minutes of stoppage time because of a VR check. It was literally the last kick of the game, and before it, like for the penalty call, would have probably been just about the last kick of the game if it went out for a goal kick rather than off Walker Zimmerman's hand. But again, this was a wild one, a lot of controversy in that the first penalty that Chicharito stepped up, took, and missed, he was not supposed to take that. Victor Vasquez was supposed to take that. Everybody kind of said all the right things, including Vasquez, Pooch, and Greg Vanny after the game. But I believe you wrote in your column, 4 for 9 now for Chicharito in penalties. I'm not sure if he's going to get a 10th.
Yeah, I doubt he'll get a 10th, but you never know. I mean, Maxi Morales is 5 for 11, and NYCFC keeps letting him take him.
And Nani in Orlando before that, he was the same thing. It was under 500, and it was like, oh, Nani's taking the next penalty. Haven't we seen this before?
That's oh my god, that's such a DP energy right there. It's amazing.
It was good. It was really good spin zone by everybody. It was like, you know what? It's not that he missed it. It's that he stepped up and took it, and we love that. Like, at some point, the ball has to go in the back of the net here.
Yeah. And by the way, though, Pooch, his penalty was not great either. Like, I think Joe Willis, you got a pot of that. Like,
I think that would have been a great save more so than an awful pen. Okay, me. But again, we're getting into semantics, so let's go back to the big picture.
So the big picture is the Galaxy played really well, man. They played so well. This Nashville team has been beating kids up and stuffing them in lockers for the past month. And the Galaxy went to Nashville, and I thought they outplayed them. But they're cursed. They're cursed between Chicharito's penalty misses and Kevin Cabral just not being able to do what you would expect any DP attacker or any professional attacker to do when they get into goal scoring positions. If you look at the underlying numbers, right, all the advanced metrics, expected goals, goals added from our friends at American Soccer Analysis, stuff like that. All of it says the Galaxy get into great spots. They create great chances. They do basically all the things in attack that good winning teams do, except for finish. They do not finish their chances.
So I feel like I'm just making the same point again and again and again for months. But can we free Dejan Joveljic? He's got 10 goals and 3 assists in 900 minutes. They played with 2 up top again and had Kevin Cabral as a second forward again. I do not understand this.
I don't either. And I think Greg Vanny
he was almost as expensive as Cabral. It's just one of them was a DP and the other one was a U22 initiative. That could have been flipped. I don't get it. If he was on another team, we'd be talking about like where would he? I know that he wouldn't be U22 initiative. 22 under 22 eligible, but we'd be talking about him as one of the young bright stars in the league if he was starting 25 games like he should be.
Yeah, no, I agree with every word, and it's like the fact that they have actually scrapped the 4-2-3-1, and they're playing in this game. They played a weird hybrid 4-4-2 diamond that morphed into a 3-5-2 with one of the Shuttlers becoming a wing back and all. Either way, it ends the formation number ends with 2. It ends with 2, and I know that Vanny is worried about defense when Joveljic and Chicharito are out there, but like you need another finisher. It can't be Kevin Cabral anymore. You can't do that to this team, because like you see the entire team's shoulder slump when Cabral misses another chance, or like at this point we've pointed this out to each other, on our Twitter feeds and group chats, whatever. Like Cabral isn't even making the runs anymore. Like in the first half of the year, he was making those runs every time. He was really dangerous off the ball. He's so shattered. Like he's just standing in the box because he doesn't want to miss another sitter. So yeah, you're right. Just like do what you did against Nashville, except put Joveljic out there from the start. And like we don't need to see Kevin Cabral anymore for the rest of it. Like I'm sorry for the kid, because it's almost tragic watching him on the field at this point. But like when the team plays this well and you need a miracle 99th minute penalty to get out with a point, and you're in 8th place, and like everybody's job is on the line, maybe it's time to stop the experiment and start to go with the guy who's got 10 goals in 900 minutes.
Yeah, I think that's all fair. And real quickly before we move on, Ricky Pooch scores. I think that we all expected him to look really tidy and really nice on the ball with good passes. Now he's got a goal contribution in each of his first 4 MLS starts, being only the second Galaxy player to do so. Just Carlos Ruiz in 2002, and they've had a lot of stars over the years, Matt Doyle. So this is he's looked, I think, as good as reasonably expected for somebody coming mid-season like this. Like I don't know, he's really brought life to this team. It's been impressive that they've had the Vasquez Pooch as like kind of the free eights or whatever you want to call it in the midfield, and they haven't been getting killed defensively against Nashville, at least.
Yeah.
Like you said, who's been scoring a ton of goals. So I think that's one positive while we just made a couple negatives.
Yeah, no disagreements there. Like this team, like look, they're below the playoff line. This team, based upon how they're playing and how they're playing, the talent they have, they should make the playoffs. They really should. But like, I would not bet on them to at this point. It just feels like they're cursed.
There's another team, though, that does have a pretty easy schedule: at Vancouver, versus Colorado, at San Jose, versus Real Salt Lake, which could be the playoff decider, at Houston. Those are 4 teams below the playoff line, and 1 team that is just barely hanging on above the playoff line. And with that as a transition, we're moving to number 13, Real Salt Lake, who had a disappointing 0-0 draw with DC United. It was a David Ochoa revenge game, revenge clean sheet. Got a point, denied his old team a chance to kind of create distance with the Galaxy on the playoff line. He had 8 saves. Doyle, what did you make of this game? Was it the David Ochoa show for you, or was it just, a bit of a disappointment for RSL's finishing?
I think it was a little bit of both. Ochoa had a very nice game, but RSL, they had their chances to be a little more dangerous and turn those front foot moments into goals. They couldn't do it. And that's been kind of the theme now over the past, 10 games or so. I think they've got only 2 wins in their past 10 or maybe 9 games. And it's more in line with, I think, what we expected RSL to be this year. Like, I'm still surprised based upon how they've played. I'm still surprised that they are where they are in the standings. Like, they can be really dynamic in transition. If you let them switch the field, which if you're watching on YouTube right now, you just saw exactly that, then they can absolutely open you up and hurt you. But like teams have kind of figured that out, right? And for one, so they're not getting as many of those chances over the past few weeks. And for 2, it's just regression. Right, they were drastically overperforming their underlying numbers for most of the season. Well, now over the since early August, they've kind of regressed to the mean, and that is for that team, for this team, that means holding on for dear life and not really able to grab onto a game, dominate it, and beat an inferior opponent even at home, which is like exactly what DC United was supposed to be in this game. Like this was a scheduled 3 points, you know?
Yeah, and they've only won 3 of the last 14 games, which has kind of precipitated this slide. And like you said, they have 0 goal difference. They have the same amount of goals for, same amount of goals against. That kind of feels right for this team, given how many times we've come on this show and for a while saying I don't know what to make of this team, or you look at the numbers, you look at the performance, and then they're coming away with points, and then they've kind of regressed to the mean in that regard. One thing to point out as well, again, Damir Kreilach has been out for just about the entire season, and he's somebody who I had voted best 11 last year. He didn't make it, but he was on some ballots. So for a few years, and then that became the popular thing to say last year. Hey, like we've been overlooking Damir Kreilach for too long. I think that we're overlooking Pablo Ruiz as well. This is a non-sequitur. You don't have to do anything with this or not. I'm just wanting to put it out for the record that Pablo Ruiz is a fantastic player. He's very fun to watch, and we need to make sure that we don't give him the Damir Kreilach treatment where it's 3 years later going, oh, hey, who's really good? Pablo Ruiz.
Yeah, he's been really good. He is one of the one of the sort of outstanding developmental stories for young South Americans, both for RSL and league wide. Like he's that good. Like they might end up selling him for $4 or $5 million. Like he can be that kind of guy, and that would be huge for RSL because they want to open up the same type of pathway either to Europe or to the top teams in Brazil, maybe that we see other teams have, especially because they've rededicated themselves to to their academy. I think they had kind of lost that over the past 3 or 4 years. From everything I understand about the new ownership group and what the front office values, they want to be that team. But for the rest of this season, they have to be a team that creates better chances, finishes those chances, gets more of the ball in good spots in midfield, not necessarily relying on Ruiz and Lawfulson to generate everything in terms of how they go forward. Like they have to get those attackers on the ball in good spots, and it just hasn't been happening for them. Though I will say this, Tom, the most MLS thing in the world would be RSL goes on the road to Austin this week and wins like 4-0 after getting shut out at home by DC United. It would be like it would be shocking, and it would not surprise me at all. Like both those things would be true.
This would be the team for it too. But talking about that remaining schedule, it feels like I said for 3 or 4 different teams in a row, they have a pretty soft schedule, pretty manageable schedule. RSL do not. At Austin, home to Cincinnati, at the Galaxy versus Portland. Those are 4 potentially playoff teams if LA jump over RSL. So it's going to be really tough for them. They're in a poor run of form. Again, if the Galaxy win their game in hand, they would take the tiebreaker and go above them. So their playoff spot right now is very precarious. Moving back to the East here real quickly, number 12, Columbus Crew. They were up cruising with a 2-0 lead on the lone Friday night game, Viernes de Football. They were beating Montreal 2-0, and they drew 2-2 with another more points dropped, from winning positions for this Columbus Crew team. And Doyle, I feel like, again, me and you have been talking about Columbus are going to be safe. The run's coming. They have too much talent. They have too much this, all that, and they just haven't pulled away from the line yet.
Yeah. Yeah, they like if you look at it on paper, if you look at it like it feels like it should be better than this. And maybe that's unfair because like I still think they're going to end up in the playoffs, right? They've got enough padding, they have the game in hand, and they've been really tough to beat. And I think if they're just tough to beat, continue to be really tough to beat down the stretch, that plus Zelarayan and Cucho, that'll be enough. But like we want more, and I don't think it's wrong to want more when you look at how this team is constructed and the type of talent that they have out there.
Yeah, and I think that's the frustrating part when like just those 2 alone, that's like a 2-man wrecking crew. Like that's regardless of anything else, that should be. I know Cucho hasn't scored in a little while. I forget the exact stats off the top of my head, but and Zelarayan was out a little bit. But this team should be so much more fun. This team should be so much more expansive. Feels like they bought 2 new wingers every season for the past 2.5 years, every window for the past 2-3 windows, and it still just ends up being the 2-man show. And again, Lucas Arian and Cucho Hernandez are 2 of the most talented players in the league, the 2 most capable of like individual brilliance that you can't even plan for tactically, and that should be bonus goals that they're getting. That it seems like those are the only goals that they're getting.
Yeah, that's really well put. The only goals that they're getting right now are the ones that come out of individual brilliance not ones that come out of their midfield play or getting wingers into the primary assist zone or getting overlapping fullbacks into good spots to sort of combine up the flanks. And then what we saw in this game, and what we've seen repeatedly, is that, okay, even if that's not happening, Zelarayan and Cucho can give you that lead. They can give you a 2-goal lead. They still find a way to blow it. Over the final 15 minutes of games, like we talked earlier about the Revs dropping 29 points from leading positions. Columbus is nowhere near that. They've dropped 17 from leading positions. That's still really bad.
Yeah.
What's worse is that over the final 15 minutes of games, they've conceded over the final 15 minutes of games that they're leading or tied in, right? So that's not even the selected, like that's a subset of total games. They have conceded 13 goals. This is a team that's only conceded 33 goals all year.
Ugh.
So what happens at the end of these games, if they're in control of the game state, meaning if they like the score, right? We're up 2-0. We just want to protect this. They just defend in Eloy Room's lap. They give teams chance after chance after chance because they just drop their back line so deep that they allow opposing teams to just, if you're watching on YouTube, you're seeing them run into a shot from central midfield. Everybody's got a shooting lane, and like it's not a high percentage shot, but if you let guys stride into that and you have a cluster of bodies in front of the goalkeeper, bad things can happen, like 2 deflected goals in the final 15 minutes of games. And Caleb Porter said after this one, if we're up, if we're 11v11, there's no chance this happens. There's no chance this happens. Except the last time they played Montreal, they were at home. It was 11v11. They were up 1-0. And guess what? The Columbus Crew lost that game 2-1 by giving up 2 goals in the final 15 minutes of that game. So they, as talented as they are, they don't seem to know how to play on the front foot, and they definitely they're killing themselves anytime they play on the back foot.
I did laugh out loud at that part of your column where it was like, here's the quote. It's like, yeah, except for the last time, not only just the last time they played this team. And again, when you're up 2-0, that's enough of a cushion that doesn't have 10v11, 11v11. Teams have to see that out. And again, maybe this is just me thinking when they were when Cucho got here, they were on a surge and it was like, okay, NYCFC were down. The Red Bulls at that time hadn't kind of recovered yet from their slump. Orlando was inconsistent. Cincinnati was still below the playoff line. The Revs had their issues. I was like, Columbus, might be one of the top few teams. Like every year we have, dangerous teams that get either hot at the right time or click at the right time or make a big midseason addition. So I think the expectations for this team is just much higher than what the reality has been.
Yeah, I don't disagree with any of that. But all of that said, they are the type of team, and I think if you're listening to this, you're probably getting this from. They're the type of team where if they suddenly got hot and started stringing together 2-0, 3-1 wins, I wouldn't be that surprised because they have the talent to do that. And we've seen Caleb Porter teams figure that out in the past. That 2015 Timbers team that won MLS Cup, they were below the playoff line 6 weeks before the season ended. They got hot. They got their best players raised their level. They started getting a little bit more from their wingers, and they won MLS Cup. So we've seen it before. We saw it from the 2020 Crew team that won MLS Cup.
Didn't win a game on the road.
They got hot down the stretch. They got lucky with the draw in MLS Cup playoffs, and they got themselves a title. So it's not unprecedented what we're talking about. It's just like if you're looking for signs of it with how they've played lately, you're not going to find anything.
And back to the Western Conference we go. After that Columbus Crew talk, we're going to go with Minnesota United, number 10 here, cracking the top 10. They are on a skid. They lost 1-0 to Portland this weekend. They have now lost 3 games in a row. Reynoso was hurt, but he should be back tonight against LAFC, according to reports. But again, this is their third 3-match losing game of the season. They went from fighting for that number 3 spot with Dallas to now they've dropped. They're only 1 point ahead of Real Salt Lake. And again, the Galaxy have a game in hand on both of these teams. If the Galaxy win, they're only 1 point clear of the playoff line. And this is a team that looked very, very comfortably in the playoffs as little as 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, it shows you how thin the margins are. in this league, and how like one bad little stretch can kill you. Tom, they played really well in this game. Did you? For those who don't know, Tom was on this disabled list this weekend with bachelor party related festivities. But did you get a chance to watch this one?
I did a lot of cramming to catch up today. A few games made its way to the. There was not any soccer guys that were on this trip, so anytime I was like, "Oh, what are you watching over there?" It's like, "Oh, it's Nashville versus the Galaxy." All right, cool, and then they would walk away. So no, this one didn't make
it. Like Adrian Heath switched to a 3-5-2 because it wasn't just Reynoso who was out; it was Franco Fragapane was out as well. And like when your best 10 and your 10 and your best winger are both out, like okay, even Adrian Heath will switch out of a 3-5-2 or out of a 4-2-3-1 for that one. But they were great the first half of this one. It's just that Mender Garcia, the DP signing they made this summer, he had a Kevin Cabral-esque first half where he was just constantly getting in on goal and finding a way not to put the ball in the back of the net. If Minnesota plays like this at all for the rest of the season, I'm going to choose not to be worried about them. I think performances like this usually result in points. And after the past couple of weeks when they were really, really bad, the loss against Dallas, and I forget who the other loss was against. Was it Nashville?
Real Salt Lake, right?
Anyway, Real Salt Lake. Like I was worried after those two games. I'm not particularly worried after this one because I think they found their groove again. And with Reynoso coming back with a little bit of flexibility now because they have the 3-5-2 in their pocket, I still think that this is a playoff team. The broader concern is what is their ceiling, because they haven't won a game since Bakaye Dabase went out injured. He's gone for the year. Brett Kalman has come in and he's taken up those minutes. Kalman is a very different center back. He's much less mobile. He left this game injured late in this game. No idea whether that's a significant injury, whether he's out for the year or maybe out for the game. For just one game, if he is, Callum Montgomery is next on the list. He's barely played MLS and he's hurt too. So then you go down to Naby Kibaguchi. Do you move Kervin Arriaga to the back line? Is it, if you want to go back to a 4-4-2, do you put Kamar Lawrence as a left center back and have him pair with Michael Boxall? Like I think the manager, Adrian Heath, has done a very good job this year. I'm not sure that his GM, Adrian Heath, has given him as many tools, as many resources as a team with, like, I think, fairly legitimate dark horse title aspirations could have wanted.
Yeah, so you preempted my next question when you said you weren't worried. I was going to bring up the defensive, again, Dabasi being out first and foremost, and second, the defensive limitations just in terms of able bodies, and not even without Dabasi, who, again, I think is a very good defender, and this team has struggled without him. Like you said, they haven't won since he's been gone, and now Coleman has a question mark over him. Like I'm not sure. I will have to kind of believe it when I see it again with this team, just because of that. I think that loss is so difficult to recover from. Look, any team losing either your best center back or your second best center back, however you want to phrase it, it's really difficult to overcome. And Reynoso being out again, he should be back tonight. Could be back tonight. They play LAFC. They do also have Kansas City, San Jose, and Vancouver, 3 teams below them on the playoff line. So I'd be really surprised if they didn't at least navigate to the playoffs. But again, 3 weeks ago, this team, you could firmly talk about them as kind of the best of the rest, or fighting for the best of the rest. And now I don't, again, my expectations for them would be very, very low when the playoffs start.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. But maybe they'll surprise us.
There you go. And any team with Emmanuel Reynoso, it's difficult to count out because that guy can be magic. Moving on to our last team here, number 9, FC Cincinnati, coming off a huge 6-0 win over the San Jose Earthquakes. Brenner with a hat trick and an assist. He won Player of the Week. That moves Cincinnati up above the playoff line. They are 4 points ahead of 8th place New England. Doyle, it's happening. Is it happening? I don't want to jinx them. I don't want to get yelled at by Cincinnati fans after 3 wooden spoons. They are 4 points above the playoff line with 4 games left, and this team is legitimately good. They are fun as hell. This team, they might make the playoffs for the first time in their MLS history.
Yeah, and they have, the schedule that they have, I think is a little bit easier than most of The rest, well, they have this weird 2-game road trip, right? They're
Yeah.
at RSL and then at Seattle, but then they have Chicago at home, and then they're away to DC United. Like it's not the easiest schedule in the world, but like
It's a nice finish.
if you're like, I would be surprised if they didn't make it at this point. And like you said, like they're playing good soccer. They're a really good soccer team. They have in Brennan Vasquez, and especially Lucho Acosta, the 3 guys who could just kill you. Like Acosta, he had a bad game this weekend. He still ended up with a goal and 2 assists, right?
Set pieces.
Set pieces. But also it's like everything. I don't want to say everything. How do I want to put this? He's the key to everything they do in the attacking third, but he's not the same sort of selfish version of him that I think we saw a lot during his DC United days. Like he has really figured out how to harness his skill and like use it all to serve the greater good of the team. And I love that in a number 10. It's like, and it's one of the most fun things when you see a guy who has that skill sort of figure it out, and he's figured it out. And the knock-on effect, of course, is that Brenner and Vasquez are having these career years. The bigger question is, okay, can they do it defensively? Can they find a way to limit chances, post zeros, be the type of team that doesn't fritter away points, because they frittered away more points. Like only the Revs have lost more points from winning positions this year. It's just happened time and again for Cincinnati. And like even, well, I won't say like that was not the case in this game, obviously, but like the first half hour, the Quakes were all over them. Like Roman Celentano had to have an incredible performance to keep it, 0-0 through 30 minutes. So even on a 6-0 win, it's not like they were putting up a sort of dominant, comprehensive, oh man, it's all clicking for this team sort of performance. Like it feels like there's more left on the table for them to sort of try to button down and be the type of team that we see go far in the playoffs. I know that was like a rant, but does that make sense?
No,
like
that's completely fair. So I think that the way that you view that positively, and the kind of the way that I've been looking at the season, and again, so many things comes down to expectations and relativity. So if we were expecting this team to finish top of the league and they came in 6th right now, we'd be looking down on them. But we expected this team to be well below the playoff line. Or I know at least I did. I'm not going to speak for you. This was a team. This was supposed to be a rebuilding year. There's so many players left over from the previous regime that, again, 3 years in a row finished bottom of the league. They are a revamped team. They made a couple key tweaks, like Lucho Acosta. They wanted to get him the ball further up the field as much as possible because all of his touches were coming kind of too deep. Brenner is a new player in this system where he's kind of playing on the front foot. Vasquez, like we've talked about, you wrote about, he was this player at the end of last year when he finally got a chance to play. So all these things, like the fact that they are where they are with only a handful of key additions, I think is extremely impressive. So you look at this year as, a bonus year. You look at this year as what should have been a rebuilding year is going to turn into, again, very likely the first playoff appearance in club history. And even if they go out with a first round exit, again, not to be moral victory FC here again, there is so much room to grow for this team. There's so much, Yu Kubo got his first goal in 53 appearances. He was signed as a DP center forward for this team, and now he got moved to a TAM number 8. Like, these are the players that they inherited, and they're still doing well with them. So I think that just looking forward at this team, it's all positive, again, because of where the expectations were for the season and what the recent history was.
Yeah, I agree with that. I still feel like they have a higher level that they can hit defensively with the addition of Nwobodo in the middle of the year and Miazga last month. Like those guys, like I still look at this Cincinnati roster and I think like they have the ability to be a lock it down team. If they figure out how to integrate those guys and how to be a team that occasionally you only need to attack with 3, you can draw your line a little bit higher. Like it feels like there's more for them left to explore. Which is to say, like I'm with you. Like I'm impressed with all of it. Chris Albright, probably GM of the year. Pat Noonan, maybe coach of the year. Like both those guys in that conversation. And yet you're left wanting more from the team in a good way. That's how, and I'm kind of bullish on their ability to find it down the stretch here. That's how good the vibes are with Cincinnati right now.
Yeah, I think that's a key distinction from what I was kind of projecting forward past this year, and you're still saying no, that there's room to grow with some of the pieces again with Nwobodo and Miazga and kind of anchoring that defense as those two kind of players. So yeah, it's all good positive vibes for FC Cincinnati. Again, they are 4 points above the playoff line. They have played the same amount of games as the New England Revolution, who are in 8th. And they have, again, the chance to make a playoff run again for the first time in club history. We're going to get to the top 10 here before we close out. Number 10, Minnesota United. Number 9, FC Cincinnati. Number 8, Portland Timbers. 7, Nashville SC. 6, New York Red Bulls. 5, Austin FC. 4, FC Dallas. 3, CF Montreal. 2, LAFC. And 1, your Supporters Shield leading Philadelphia Union, who got their biggest victory of the weekend by dunking on the Dallas Cowboys. That is a fun.
What a tweet. What a tweet, man. That was like whoever the union admin is who fired that one off. That was incredible. Well done.
Yeah, I think that was the high point of the Sunday night, particularly for the Philly fans. Eagles won, the Union won, and then you got the Union dunking over the Cowboys. That's a perfect weekend, Matt Doyle, for the Philadelphia faithful.
It feels like it. It feels like it.
All right, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to another edition of Power Rankings presented by SoRare. Don't go anywhere too much around MLS because we got games coming up tonight and tomorrow. Playoff races here. Matt Doyle's What 2022 Meant for Your Team. They're coming out as teams are eliminated. Again, this is one of the best pieces of content, best pieces of most informative, most entertaining pieces of writing we put on the site all year. So I cannot encourage you more to read that again as all these teams are eliminated. We won't throw 14 at you at once when the playoffs start. So it should be pretty manageable because there's going to be a lot of words. They're going to be fun GIFs. Do whatever you want. Matt Doyle, GIFs or GIF?
GIF.
Okay. Sounds good.
Graphic interface. Graphic. Hard G. GIF.
Okay. Thanks, nerd. All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be back next week.